When we look at the world in which we live today, we recognize so many connections. Information flows are so immense and at the same time intensive. There is the movement of money, very easy movement due to international connections, the internet, and all kinds of satellites transmitting information. People are traveling and moving from place to place. Okay, it was slowed down a bit by the pandemic, but that is resurging. So lots of interrelationships within communities, within districts, within states and countries and in the entire world. With all of these interconnections and relationships, making decisions and making public policy becomes really complex. What we have, in fact, are a range of problems now afflicting humanity that are sometimes called wicked public policy problems. They are called wicked problems because they cannot be solved easily. You start a particular approach to a solution, and that solution creates another set of problems. Or if you look at the problem and the way it is presenting itself before us, you see you need a range of inputs. You might need technology inputs, you might need policy inputs, you need governance and institutional inputs, and of course investment, money, and so on. All these factors are interacting with each other. If you take an approach to public policy which is not matching the level of complexity of the problem that you are trying to solve, then you are likely to fail. And so many approaches these days, whether in India or outside of India, are taking traditional, more simplistic approaches to public policy, like using a policy cycle approach to solving these problems. So, what are the new tools that are available that can help us to address these wicked problems in this world which we sometimes call a VUCA world? We say VUCA, V-U-C-A, V being volatile, U being uncertain, C being complex, and A being ambiguous. So in this VUCA world that we are talking about, we need a matching set of concepts and tools in order to make policy in a more effective way. What are some of the conceptual frames that help us? So the first one is complex adaptive systems thinking, and this might look like it's difficult to grasp or to understand, but let me explain it in a simple way. There is a big difference between complicated and complex. See, complicated is largely technical. It's largely a physical problem. So if you have to send a rocket to the moon, that's complicated. But once you get it right, you can develop a manual that others who come after you can follow that and get a high chance of success. Complex, on the other hand, is constantly changing. It's growing, developing, adapting. That's the nature of a complex adaptive system. An example, growing up a child. So you bring up a child, the first child, you prepare a manual based on your experience in bringing up that first child, and you use that manual to bring up the second child, you might be courting disaster. Because that child has a mind of its own. It's growing, adapting, relating to the environment around it, listening and learning. It's constantly learning and changing. That's what we mean by a complex adaptive system. Now, what are some other examples of complex adaptive systems? Economic systems. The economic system that is working around us has a large number of actors in the marketplace, relationships between buyers and sellers, producers and distributors, and all of these relationships and transactions going to make the economic system. It's not run by any one person, whether that be a prime minister or a president. It's a self-organizing, emergent kind of system, or the society beyond the economic system, in which you have social structures, social interrelationships, culture and caste and race and ethnicity and language and literature. All of this is interacting to make another kind of a complex adaptive system, or the human brain. Billions of neurons are constantly interacting in order to make sense of the world around you. Each one of us has this complex adaptive system called our brain. And so we have flocks of birds flying in the air. They form beautiful patterns without any commander directing them as to how to form that pattern. Self-organizing, spontaneous. How do you deal with these systems? Not the system of the bird, but the public policy problems that now have to deal with poverty, economic inequality, social exclusion, climate change, species extinction, and the list goes on and on. These problems are much closer to the complex adaptive system that I just explained, rather than sending a rocket to the moon, which is largely technical, physical challenge. So in order to solve complex problems, we need to look at the technology, yes, but also the social side, the economic side, the political side, the institutional side, and have a framework in which they are interacting and make it feasible in order to do that. And that's what we are doing in our Center for Complexity Economics. These systems have been applied into economics. See, economics has been called the dismal science for good reason. Economics is an artificial construct in which economists, traditionally at least, have made so many assumptions to simplify the world in order to make the mathematics work that it has little to do now with the real world that I am discussing with you. In order to deal with that real world, we need now to get rid of many of these simplifying assumptions, like assuming that human beings are perfectly rational, that they have all the information they need to make decisions, that they are in control of the decisions they make. None of these is in fact accurate. There's a book called Predictably Irrational, talking about humans. They are going to make decisions that are based on emotion, decisions that are based on feelings, and as well some amount of reason. So it's all a mix-up mess, you might want to call it that, but it's a beautiful mess that we can work with. And complex adaptive systems tools such as data mining, such as complex adaptive system modeling, agent-based modeling in which the agents are no longer uniform and representative. And we have a range now of sense-making tools such as the Cynefin framework, the Stacy matrix, and it goes on. So that's what we do, and we prepare our students to be able to deal with the real world rather than a simplified kind of artificial world in which we were operating in the past.